Every single season by now, it feels like we get an anime that is insanely hyped up, destined to become one of the most successful anime of all time. Just 2 years ago we had Jujutsu Kaisen, which received an amazing adaptation and became one of the most watched anime. Last season we also witnessed Frieren, which completely reworked our perception of what a good fantasy is. However, there were also some that didn't receive as much success as expected, like Hell's Paradise, which no one told about after the first episode, or Record of Ragnarok, which well, doesn't need an explanation. This season we have Solo Leveling, one of the most popular and highest rated manhwa of all time. It's a power fantasy, a really popular genre simply because, well, it's relatable. Let's admit it, the reason why we love this kind of anime is because we can relate to the main character. In the past, the average person who watched anime was considered a bit of a loser, and these characters were intentionally written to be relatable. We all aspire to become stronger, better individuals, find love, and lead fulfilling lives. The anime industry quickly realized that all they need is a crybaby main character, a fantasy world, a female companion, and with that they made millions upon millions. Solo Leveling is just like that. A standard fantasy with a loser, kind of stupid character that is really dedicated to keep going no matter what. So what did it do differently to become the highest rated manhwa of all time? Well, nothing really. It doesn't introduce anything unique, there is no mind-blowing twist, and it doesn't have a story we've never seen before. However, what sets it apart is that it excels at what you expect it to do, and that's why we love it. The story unfolds in a world where 10 years ago, gates appeared and connected the real world to a dimension filled with monsters and creatures. Around the same time, humans started to awaken magical powers that were useful for killing the monsters and closing these gates, creating the Hunters, a billion-dollar industry. The story is centered around son Jin-Woo, an E-rank hunter considered the weakest among hunters. However, Jin-Woo isn't even truly considered a hunter. He is looked down upon by majority of other hunters, simply because he can barely defeat the weakest enemies and often just holds back all the others. Pretty much a reverse Levi. Despite that though, he continues to take on missions to pay for his mother's hospital bills and support his sister. One day, he and some other hunters enter a gate where everyone but Jin-Woo had a pretty easy time defeating the dungeon boss. However, one of the team members notices an entrance to a cave where the majority of the team votes to enter it. After a while, they arrive in front of a massive door that we definitely have not seen before, inside finding massive ancient statues with instructions. Despite it being empty, Jin-Woo just had a weird vibe about the place, as if the statues were staring at them. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the entrance shuts and one of the team members in a panic tries to push the door but gets instantly murdered by one of the statues. As everyone starts panicking, Jin-Woo tries his best to figure out what they can do. But with every new challenge, more and more people die, leaving only 3 of them alive in the dungeon where Jin-Woo sacrifices himself. But actually, he's alive and well. Just before he almost died, he accepted to become a player. And that's where the simple yet really fun part of the anime starts. He continues grinding to become stronger and stronger through his solo leveling. The anime has a fairly normal start, with everything you'd expect from a fantasy. However, many people don't like it at all, which typically happens with every anime that is insanely hyped up, but not to this level. So what happened? Well, there are 2 reasons. One is that it would have benefited so much from an hour-long special. It's a proven formula that works super well to really catch people's attention. Last year both Oshinoko and Frieren followed this approach, airing multiple episodes at once to reach a certain point that they knew was really liked by the readers. However, for some reason, they decided to air it normally, even though they did a 2-episode premiere prior to that. It's as if they knew that was the best way to watch it and still decided not to go for it. It definitely turned a lot of people away, unfortunately. And the second is something that I want to call the manhwa effect. A few years ago, when Crunchyroll announced their so-called Crunchyroll Originals, they animated some of the most popular manhwa of that time. It was supposed to be this next big thing, and somehow it got worse with every single adaptation. It got so bad that by the time it got to Noblesse, everyone just dropped it after the first episode, creating this idea that there is just no way to make a good manhwa adaptation, which is exactly why there are so many people complaining. However, this is exactly the reason why Solo Leveling has to succeed. If this somehow fails, there just won't be another manhwa adaptation ever again. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 4 times, I'm a fucking idiot. Although, even though there are a lot of people disliking the show, I actually think it's going to succeed. But why? This is not the type of anime I usually enjoy, and I didn't find the first few episodes appealing, except for that really brutal part in episode 2. However, I gave it another chance, and it's actually quite enjoyable to watch. Regarding the story, as I mentioned earlier, it lacks uniqueness, but I appreciate its simplicity. Not everything needs to be complicated. Sometimes you just want to watch something basic without having to think too much, and this anime is perfect for that. A guy fighting for a simple reason is sometimes all we need for entertainment. However, when anime lacks a detailed story, it absolutely needs good characters, and well, we only really have Jin-Woo. Usually when I make these videos, there are at least 3 or 4 characters I can talk about, but there is no one particularly interesting so far. However, I really like Jin-Woo, which I think is the main reason why I enjoy watching the anime. At the start, he's the most basic character you can think of. He's a fucking pussy, but I enjoy the fact that he never gave up and kept trying to become stronger. There are also just so many random things happening with him. I could not believe my eyes when the system forced him to do the Saitama training, or he gets eaten by a giant centipede. So why is he doing the Unga Bunga strength build? It makes perfect sense, but so random. However, he undergoes a significant change quite quickly, which is something a lot of people disliked, but I personally really enjoyed. I generally thought he's going to turn into this really emotionless person. But in episode 6, when he starts killing everyone, realizing that the system wants to use him out was such a surprisingly good twist. It reminded me of another scene. Although what brings the anime to another level, and what I appreciate the most about this anime, is the production. It's always my favorite part in anime. I love seeing how much effort people put into the smallest details, and I think the production for this anime is so underrated. It addresses all the things people complained about with other manhwa adaptation, like the pacing. It generally couldn't get much better. I also appreciated all the additional scenes added, like this one, which did not exist in the source material. This means that someone had the idea and had to explain why it's so important to include it in the first episode. If that doesn't show you how dedicated they are, I don't know what does. Weirdly enough, I saw a lot of people complaining about the animation quality. What more do you want? I can agree that the art style isn't great, but the animation is as good as it can get. The director also did an amazing job when it mattered. Episode 2 needed to hit you to make you feel something, for the anime to have any chance to succeed, and it was super well done. The feeling of despair and helplessness inside the temple while they were trying to figure out how it works was just perfect. People screaming, running away, getting murdered. It was so uncomfortably detailed, yet I loved it. The tension combined with really good OSTs from Sawano Hiroyuki and the voice acting of Ben Taito made the scene perfect. Even in the recent episodes, the quality doesn't drop off. I'm not a huge fan of fight scenes, but this is sick. Overall, there are a lot of things that could have been executed better to make sure people don't lose interest. However, the anime is actually really fun to watch, and if you decided to drop it, trust me, give it another chance. However, if you want to see a video about another manhwa adaptation that didn't succeed, then click on this video. See you hopefully next week. Goodbye.